Hello, this is Dr. Llewellyn Eisen, and I am happy to record this brief little video lecture. We have a grand total of 15 minutes on this system to reconsider or consider more thoughtfully some of the material that we discussed already on Palestinian Judaism. So, this forms part of the social context within which Christianity is going to emerge. And again, Christianity emerges within a context of Palestinian Judaism, which itself is in the context of the Roman Empire, an empire that is influenced by Hellenistic culture and also multiple religions in late antiquity. So you have a very complex set of historical, contextual, linguistic layers that you have to really get through before you get to Christianity. So we'll spend a little bit more time on this, and this lecture gives you a chance to review some of that if you need. So what we have here in the Burgundy is the context of the Roman Empire in the 1st century, and as discussed in class, there are a variety of what we call religions that are operational in antiquity at the time of the emergence of Christianity. You have, of course, Greek and Roman divine figures, gods and goddesses, and deities. There are Northern European and Central European indigenous religions, which are operational at this time. In the area where Christianity will emerge, you have, of course, the religion of the Hebrew people, which itself is influenced by their time in captivity under the Persians, and so Zoroastrianism is an influencing factor. And then, of course, in the Arabian Peninsula, you have indigenous Arabian religious activity. Again, religion is a modern category. These are practices, rituals, and beliefs that form part of people's normal lives, which we call religion. And so we have to be mindful of that as we think about and study the emergence of the Christian religion. So we're going to talk today about Palestinian Judaism, which of course is Jewish and is the religion of the Hebrew people. Some central features of the religion of the Hebrew people is, first of all, that they are monotheistic. And monotheism has actually a couple of different definitions. But for the sake of our consideration of Judaism, we are going to understand it as being, meaning that monotheism is the worship and belief in the existence of just one God, and that God created everything. There are a couple of major monotheisms in our world today. Judaism, of course, Christianity, and Islam. Of those three major monotheistic religions, Christianity actually has the hardest time arguing and defending itself as a monotheism, since it has its understanding of monotheism is tritheistic, but we'll worry about that another day. For our purposes, Judaism understands itself as monotheistic, but it is very clear that this is a position with which it will struggle extensively. As well as being monotheistic, another central feature of the religion of the Hebrew people is the belief that the one God, the monotheism, the one God of the Hebrew people made a covenant, made a pact or a deal with God's special people, and those special people are the Hebrews. And you can see already that both of these factors, being monotheistic in a pluralistic religious world, and the notion that there is a special group of people for that one God, you can see that those are already problematic elements for Mediterranean culture. Okay. A third central feature of the religion of the Hebrew people is that this one God made a code with which they must obey as their part of the covenant. And we'll take a look at this covenant and this code here momentarily. But as mentioned in class, what this means for Jews, or the Hebrew people, eventually the Israelites, and then the Jews, these are defining words we need to understand. What this means is that there's an obligation on the part of the followers of this one God to behave in a certain way. And this is what we call an ethical monotheism, meaning that you have a monotheistic system. So you have belief in one God, and belief in that one God carries with it implications, which we will talk about here in a minute. And then finally, another central feature of the religion of the Hebrew people is that the belief that one God is everywhere, but that one God is properly worshipped in the temple in Jerusalem. Now, it is not the case that God cannot be worshipped elsewhere, but it is that God is properly worshipped in the temple in Jerusalem. And you can see that for a first century Roman Empire that promotes religious expression, you can see that all four of these things are going to be problems for their colonizers. Because sometimes monotheism carries with it the notion that not just that you believe in one God, but that you believe that other people's gods don't exist. Okay, so a few bits of history about the Hebrew people. One of the important texts about the emergence of the religion of the Hebrews is found in the Genesis, a primary source known as Genesis, which is part of the Hebrew Bible. And we have evidence of a pre-1000 BCE Fertile Crescent settlement by a northern Arabian tribe that came from the territory of Ur. And the primary source that cites the importance of this is found in Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3, in which the Lord said to Abram, an important patriarchal figure, quote, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed," end quote. So you can see from this little red line here along the Euphrates up to the north and then down into the Palestine Sinai area, you can see that, first of all, this particular family moves along a very sensible route along the Euphrates River, where you have water and you have fertile land. But that ultimately they settle in a territory that we now understand as Palestine. And their argument is that this is going to be land that God is given to them. And this, of course, is going to create all kinds of problems for the next 2,000 years up into the current day. And it's hard to argue against land that is given by a divine figure, especially if you understand that divine figure as being the only divine figure. All right. So this is territory that is going to be deeply important to this particular group of people. In time, a kingdom is going to be established, the kingdom of Israel, which means Jacob, although, as mentioned in class, Jacob and Israel do not appear to be related words in English, but in the Hebrew, that is in reference to Jacob, the grandson of Abram. Again, another important patriarchal figure. And close to 40 years later or so, a temple is going to be built in Jerusalem. That is the temple wherein which the sole God of the Kingdom of Israel is going to be worshipped. Again, most properly worshipped in the temple, which of course will have great significance for trade and travel. About 200 years later, the Kingdom of Israel will experience defeat at the hands of the Assyrians, and this portion of the kingdom will be taken into captivity. They will be exiled. The Kingdom of Judah, and you'll notice Jerusalem here is in the northern part of the Kingdom of Judah, will continue to exist until 587, about another 200 years. But at that point, the southern kingdom will be defeated by the Babylonians, and shortly thereafter, the temple will be destroyed. Not long after, the Israelites will be returned to Jerusalem by Cyrus the Great, known often as the King of Kings for his benevolence, and the temple will be rebuilt. But Palestinian Judaism is going to be disrupted and will struggle with another empire that will emerge at this time, which is the empire of Alexander the Great. And here is where Mediterranean culture of the Greeks and then eventually the Romans will come into conflict with Palestinian Israeli culture and religion. So Alexander the Great will spread Hellenistic culture in his far reach from the kingdom of Macedonia all the way, Greece, all the way across to India. And to many living in Palestine and in Sinai, Hellenism is not going to be seen as a beneficial thing. It will be seen as an eradication of Israelite culture, but this is not uniform. It is not the case that all Jews are going to understand Hellenism as problematic or as an insulting, degrading culture. And so there will be tension within among the Israelites about how to work with this cultural construct that's placed over them. 2 centuries before the Common Era, there will be a very violent revolt among the Maccabean family against the Seleucids in response to what is seen as the co-opting of sacred sites for the Jews. And so consequently, this revolt is going to raise some important issues for the Israelites. And the question that I asked, that is based on the Lynch reading, chapter 2, the Jewish context of the Jesus movement, the question is, forced Hellenization and the war that it brought had consequences for the social and religious context into which Jesus would be born and raised. Please identify some of those consequences. And a careful reading of your Lynch will reveal to you that some of those consequences include the fact that there is a separation or an intensification of separation between Jews and Gentiles. It is not the case that even though Jews hope to keep their culture intact, that there is no interaction between Jews and Gentiles. But the separation, especially in Palestine, is going to be intensified during that time. Naturally, there's going to be a rise of fundamentalism, and we don't want to just think of fundamentalism in a 21st century context, but there is an important link. When you have people who are fearful that their culture is being eradicated, very often they will retreat and value certain fundamentals. And so you are certainly finding that this to be the case during these 2 centuries before the Common Era. In addition, there are tensions within Judaism around